Very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Uzama.
And I'm Kaido Kikilu. It is Tuesday, February the 10th. You can call it Decision Day for Nigeria's Senate. By extension, Decision Day for Nigeria. It's not the big day yet, elections that is, but it's the build-up to the elections. Today is a day where Nigerians hopefully get to find out what's that, what I call it famous or infamous now, section or clause 60 of the Electoral Act.
Subsection 3.
Is it famous now or infamous?
It's whichever words come to your mind, but the clarity, and I've heard all kinds of argument, but I think the political class have to be fair to Nigerians so that you don't gaslight the citizens. And this is as clear as crystal. Whatever was done in 2023 is not too different as what is expected. The only difference here is that there should not be a reason why. So I'm explaining what this contention is.
Yeah.
There should not be a reason why, because the law provides for it, why after election results have been, the votes have been counted, collated, sorted, counted, collated, and declared. And everybody countersigns. What I mean everybody countersigning is the INEC official signs, party official signs, everybody that's supposed to sign. Before it leaves that polling unit or anywhere, it must be snapped and uploaded on whatever portal. Now what we have is IREF. That is the argument here. It's not beyond what I just explained. Because we've seen incidents in the previous election where some people have a reason why it should not be snapped. And it's being clever by half. The BVAS machine is used for accreditation, is used for snapping that. So what exactly is going on? If you could do accreditation, why can't it just snap? So the argument here is that there should not be a reason why a polling officer or whatever name polling unit officer should not snap that machine at that results. Now, the issue of real time is another argument I'm seeing. Maybe it's the language real time that is a problem, but I think with the greatest sense of respect, I think it's almost being clever by half to not to understand what real time is. I do not think there's anywhere in this world where you see all election results at the same time, which is the technical meaning of real time. Election result keeps trickling in. That's the language we use. Even in America, that's where they have exit polls. We're all here 2023 trying to do our own exit poll until INEC frustrated it. Now, what made it fishy, and again, we're dealing with a traumatic situation.
Yeah.
In that election, we're doing verdicts here, and we covered that election extensively. Why is this a big issue? It's because of that last year presidential, 2023 presidential election, not any other election, that INEC had promised, quote-unquote, real time, also release the result just like the others. But what happened was, we're waiting here, election had ended, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., INEC was not speaking. 1 a.m., INEC was not talking. 6 a.m., INEC was not talking. 12 noon the next day, I think we started hearing things around 4 p.m. the next day. That's unacceptable. Now, why did I explain all of this? Because real time doesn't mean immediately. It means as soon as, make sure it is snapped, and whenever the network comes, because the result will trickle in. What was not acceptable, what kind of upload will make the presidential election to delay for almost 24 hours. In a country where there's suspicion, then something was fishy. Now that is all in the past. The Supreme Court has decided all of that. To avoid a repeat is what we're saying here. So this argument is just simply the Senate. Let me speak to the Senate now. We're saying that as simple as snapping the results of from EC8A as soon as everybody has signed and upload it. For city centers like Lagos and every other place, we're going to see it almost immediately or literally immediately. For the rural areas, we'll not see it immediately until they get network. And if for any reason, the law provides in section 47 that if we're using the BVAS in an election or any other electronic device in an election and something goes wrong that it cannot use, another BVAS will be provided. If that does not work, what happens is that INEC will fix another election in about 24 hours, and that will depend on whether or not the election that will be fixed in 24 hours has the capacity to significantly alter the result or the outcome. So the law has provided for everything literally we envisage. So there are different layers of agitation. if what was done at the polling unit, the entries are contentious, there can be some maybe corrections at the ward level. If you challenge that, INEC, the returning officer, has a part to overrule. If the INEC can review elections in 7 days, if you don't agree with INEC, you go to tribunal. So there's a sequence. So I don't know why the complexity is. It's not as complex as they are trying to make it look.
Jeffrey, you're doing a lot of the analysis that Nigerians will sit here you do during the course of the day, because the Senate has called for that emergency plenary, and it's expected that these issues will be tabled and thrashed out. So stay with Channels Television for live coverage of all of the proceedings in plenary. Yes, we saw the protests yesterday by civil society. Even the presidential candidate of Labour Party in 2023 election, Mr. Peter Obi, was there. Leaders across the civil society organizations were there as well, and their demand was quite simple: let us have electronic transmission, which is why I stayed quiet on the subsection. We know it is section 60 or clause 60, as the case may be, but is it going to be 3 or 5? That is the big question. 3 is the one that says transfer electronically, which is meant to be the new one, but if you're going to stay with the old one, which is 5, then that is what we'll have. But this is what you saw play out yesterday, and it looks like there will be a lot more at the National Assembly today. As I said, stay with us for all of the updates.
So what will happen, just for educating Nigerians, is that the Senate will do their votes and proceedings, because they set up a committee already. After that vote and proceeding, whatever they decide, they have decided, then the conference committee will now meet, harmonize it. They will either take the position of the House of Reps or take the position of the Senate. I do not know whether any further amendment can be done at that level, because I know civil society is even reframing the language of section 60, subsection 3.
So there you have it. We'll find out how things play out today. But, you know, you may forgive some Nigerians if they're not paying as much attention to electronic voting, what have you, because they're facing insecurity in their communities. We can talk about Kwara State and the family still mourning the death of their loved ones from last week's massacre. And this week again, we've seen abduction, particularly in Benue State, where gunmen abducted worshippers, 9 of them, at St. John's Catholic Church, Ojije, in Utonko district of Ado local government area. Now, victims were reportedly whisked away during a vigil in the church premises. A former councillor representing Ukwenyo Ward in Ado local Government Legislative Council, Emmanuel Uda, confirmed the incident yesterday, and you see images from the church where the abduction took place. In a telephone conversation with Channels TV, Mr. Uda described the abduction as a targeted and planned crime against the church when innocent worshippers were at the most sacred ground, a place of worship, a place for peace and refuge, only to be abducted while praying, while they were vulnerable and unarmed. Now, this is not the first time we see an attack in Benue State, just in the space of 1 week. In fact, a matter of a few days ago, gunmen suspected to be herders killed 13 people in Kwande local government area of the state while taking several market women captive before setting the market ablaze. The name of the market is Anwase Market in Mbekyo, Kwande local government area. So for these people, what matters to them first is protection, ensuring that their loved ones return, ensuring that they have some sort of justice for the killings, for the abductions, for the displacements, for the destruction. So this is the reality of a lot of people. And that's why a lot of people say that elections actually have consequences.
It's exhausting. Every day we come here, we analyze, guests analyze and talk about these things. I will continue to maintain the position that we are not ready to tackle insecurity. When we are ready, we will all know. And that will be premised on the leadership of our country, this time the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The day politicians forget for a moment whether or not, doesn't matter whose ox is God, they will fix national insecurity and look at all the encumbrances, because sometimes issues of security it's not like from A to B to C. It's not that strict. There's so many things that you look at. And I feel that if we begin to value first, there has to be an appreciation for human lives. That is where the problem is. It begins with, do we as a people, you can argue, you have your position, but the results are there. Before our very eyes, people in Kwara were slaughtered, and now we're debating numbers. And it's very funny, the kinds of things, and almost upsetting, the kinds of things we debate. That debating, is it 70, is it 150, is it 170? What even if it's 2 or 1? Somebody comes and say, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill you, and they indeed kill, and they cannot be protected by the state. We're not saying there's nowhere where, insecurity, but Nigeria is beginning to look like a crime scene, and it's not right. We have a government, and there's a reason for a government. Now, this is not a Bola Tinubu's creation, but now it's a Bola Tinubu's problem. He has to solve it as our president. So let's be clear. We're here, and when some Christians in the north said we were targeted, and then there was a furor everywhere. That is their reality. For them, they are being targeted by jihadist extremist elements who are trying to kill them for their faith. That is their reality. You cannot use narrative and counter that. No, it's their reality. But that doesn't mean Muslims are not also targeted. In fact, in some parts of Nigeria, more Muslims have been killed way more than the Christians. And then we begin to argue, oh, is it more Muslims that are killed? Is it more Christians? Are we joking as people? People are being killed. That is the fundamental issue here. Life is too cheap. Life is too, I don't know. It has to stop. And they say after this government, there's a reason why people say that. If government wants to get you right now, they know what to do. They have the resources to find you. So I do not think, let me put it on record, the government is serious enough about solving national insecurity. Like everybody that comes tries to, that's what happened with Jonathan, former President Goodluck Jonathan. We were screaming, proscribe, declare these people terrorists. Everybody was screaming, these people are terrorists. He was trying to look at his next election, trying to know how to categorize them. Before he knew what was happening, it has festered and metastasized. And then we have this trouble in our hand. And then every government comes, oh, are they my brothers? Are they not my brothers? It does a mess. Please, our leaders, you have only one job, not more than one. Protection of lives and property. Every other thing is just an excess of the responsibility you have. If you fail on that, we don't care what you did. You have failed.
So speaking of what the government is doing, particularly at the federal and state level, we can tell you that President Bola Tinubu is assuring Nigerians that his administration will conquer the threats posed by terrorists and bandits in the country. Well, the president gave assurance during his opening remarks at the National Executive Council Conference on Inclusive Growth and Sustainable National Development. In the president's words, it says, I'm leaving here again to further find means to strengthen our security forces to defeat terrorism and banditry. That I promise you, he said. He says it is what has kept all of them sleepless at night, but he's given the assurance that we will win with determination and resilience. In fact, he commended some state governors for the work he says they are doing, governors of Borno, Katsina, Kaduna, for their role in protecting the country's freedom and security. And that's the president speaking there yesterday. But is this enough for the people in Kwara, people in Benue, for those who've been abducted on the highways, for those in other parts of a country that can't afford to sleep at night? The question is this enough? Well, we'll find out in the coming days, but clearly all hands must be on deck. The president must do better. The state governments must do better to ensure that Nigerians are protected.
So at the end of the day, what happened to that threat? When he said those words at the presentation of the budget, it was very, there's something about the president talking that gives you confidence. Although I knew, by history, how much will it go, but there's something about the president giving assurance to the people that this can be fixed. But right now, it's not just assurance people need. People just want to sleep and wake up. Yeah, Mr. President, you have promised that there will no longer be tolerance for these elements, whoever their names are. In fact, your minister came and did an explainer, just in case anybody was not sure what he was saying. If you bear arms, you're an enemy of the state, and the state is going to come after you big time. But now people have been slaughtered. So what happens to all of that? Well, our thoughts and our prayers are with every family that is affected, every family that is unsure whether they are abducted, brother or sister or family member or friends or relative or associate is still alive. There's enough to go around. We're not sorted with our educational system. We're not sorted with our infrastructure. We're not sorted with our health system. Adding this layer is just a huge distraction. And the president and his leadership and every subnational leadership must do what they can. If state police will help carry, why are we delaying? I can't wait for the constitution amendment so that these governors will stop giving excuses. And just, some of the governors, by the way, because some are trying, some we don't even know. Maybe at the end of the year, the things that cross my mind, I think it's going to put me in trouble, but it's okay. At the end of the day, we need to assess some of this subnational leadership. Now you have more money. You have more money to take care of your people. Please support the president by doing your own bit. Whatever that bit is, I do not know. Do your bit to secure your people. That's the little we can say. But we'll take a short break. And when we come back, Adeni Ifetayo, who is the CEO of PENGASSAN magazine, will join us, Kari.
Absolutely. But before that, we'll give you an early bird access to what is expected to play out today on the floor of the Senate with the Electoral Act amendments, we'll call it repeal and reenactment. NLB joins us in a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, let's get right into what is expected to play out today in the National Assembly with electronic transmission controversies. There's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of, no, this is what we said, this is not what we said, this is what we agreed on, this is not what we agreed on. But we're joined by former convener, Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, and Madam NLB. She was there yesterday. It's good to see you again, Madam Obi, and good morning.
Good morning, and nice to see you too. Thank you.
Well, we had to see you again. It's almost like everybody just called in the cavalry. Let us ensure that this is done. I wonder what your takeaway is from at least yesterday's call to action, the protest. Do you sense that the Senate is going to eventually pass this electronic transmission, or are you hearing something different?
I think it is their own interest, to just pass the bill, because there's so many things coming out of Senate. You are hearing, we're not against the Senate, they need to know that. And we're happy to hear the other voices from the Senate as well. At least many of them have come out to say more than 90% of Senate is for the electronic transmission. If you think you have the majority already, why are you scared of electronic transmission? So if many have adjourned and they have met, just like, with the interview with Senator Ningi yesterday and many other senators that have come out, that actually what they pass is electronic transmission real time. What is the quarrel with the real time? Some of the things that is come out, are we speaking with water in our mouth? Some of the things coming out is that there will be no network. We have gone to different elections with the beavers. And before the 2023 general election, the beavers were tested in so many obstacle elections. It was tested in Anambra, in Osun State, in Edo, and also Ekiti. And before 9 p.m., we already have, the results. We already almost have about 90% of the results. And that showed up too, even in the 2023 general election, the National Assembly results were up, except for the presidential report. And so what we are saying as civil society organizations, we are not the ones contesting the elections. We are saying let there be a transparent means, a system that builds confidence with the people, a system that they know that they will come and they vote and their votes will be counted. You know that we are at the lowest ebb in terms of the reactions from the public or the number of people that have voted in the voter turnout. And what we're doing is let there be a transparent system You know, so these things are coming in. And another area that we should also look at, apart from the electronic transmission, the real time, is the issue of reducing the number of days for notification. 360 days. INEC is complaining of the time, that the time is not enough. And now you want to reduce it by half. It doesn't make sense at all. Is it INEC that complained to you to say we need less time? Ghana just, finished their election, last year. The next election for Ghana, they just completed their primary. So they now know the candidates that are going to come in the next 3 years. And Nigeria is here joking, and we are saying 1 year or 360 days is not enough. So what we are hearing, what we think should be done, the Senate President also came out to say, no, we are not against, the transmission, electronic transmission, because it's there already. Put it in black and white. There was an issue with the judgment. The judgment, Supreme Court judgment, or wherever that is coming from. There is something on ground, and that's why they are seeking for the amendment. The amendment didn't come from nothing. If not, we should work with the 2023, with the 2022 electoral bill. And this day, it reminds us again, 2022, if you remember, we were on the streets and asking the president. It was about 7 times. So we are wasting a lot of time between the transmission, between even the time that the Senate, that's the National Assembly, will transmit to, to the president for assenting. So we are here, a lot of people, the turnout yesterday was good, but more mobilization is going on from different environments, and I'm happy that Nigerians are reacting. Let them not tempt people. People are tired. People, because we do a lot of mobilization. How do you go back to the people now to say you're mobilizing for the 2027 general election? If they do this, everybody can say, okay, let us go. And I want to remind us that the 2023 general election, much as it was flawed, in several ways because of the reportage that came up at the end of the day, many sitting governors or sitting senators and all of that lost their positions to other people. What that means is that there were aspects of the transparency and that the beavers work. And this is why we are saying, let it be open to people. When somebody who is an Okada rider gets a space to go to the House of Rep and all of that. So there were some positives on the side. And that's what we want to allow. We just want a free and fair system. Let Nigerians who wish to contest go out there and contest. And let's see where it takes us to. So yesterday was good, but we are waiting for what will happen today. Let them now come out clean. We have seen. I want to also take the opportunity to commend the Nigerian police yesterday. Because going out yesterday, a lot of people came up and said, the National Assembly gate has been barricaded. Nobody is allowed to go to the place. We know these are human beings as well, and I commend them. I saw we met with the DPO of the National Assembly. The area commander was also there for the Nigerian police. And then we had, both the road safety and others, civil defense were also there. We didn't want to go inside the National Assembly yesterday. We didn't come and cause any trouble. We came for our voices to be heard. And I'm happy that gently we came, maintain the decorum. Some people reported that the police put barricades to prevent us from going. No, it was even in agreement with the police. They said, where do you want to stop? We said, we stop here. Let the vehicles continue to move. It was much later that the gate was closed. If not, we're not there to cause any trouble. We're there for our voices to be heard. And if, as they are conducting the emergency session today, if they listen to the voices of the people, pass the bill. What is it? You say you have...
all right, Madam Obi, if I may comment, just to further, I know that there was a release by civil society organizations yesterday, and I want to read an aspect of that release yesterday that has to do with this argument. I want you to speak to the argument of real time. The document says that for the avoidance of doubt, we provide clarity on the concept of real time. Real time electronic transmission of results means sending the official polling unit results recorded on Form EC8A electronically from the polling unit directly to the central results portal immediately after voting has ended, ballots have been counted, and the results have been publicly announced at the polling unit. This transmission happens in the presence of party agents, observers, and voters at the polling unit. Now, towards the end, it says, real-time transmission creates an electronic copy of the result at the point of where it is first declared. Real-time does not mean automatic transmission of votes as voters cast their ballot, nor does it mean electronic collation of results. I think this is clear enough. Is civil society also lobbying the Senate to say, you got it wrong, but this is what we mean?
I think they know what real time is. You know, they know what real time is. Some of the arguments, I think one of the senators pointed out the fact that in his own community, there is no network and so on and so forth. Real time means you upload as soon as when the voting is over and the votes have been counted. Normally, even the forms are signed by the party agents right there. And that is what they're saying, that when this is over, you upload into the system. You know, like when you have your WhatsApp messages, when you go to environments where in the last 6 weeks or thereabout, you know, the intermittent kind of network that we have. If you send your message will hang maybe for a bit. But when network comes, you just automatically, it will upload. It uploads automatically. So don't worry yourself about if you upload, it will not work. Don't worry yourself about that. Once you upload, we go into research. We use different tools in the field. When you upload, what happens is at any little opportunity where you go into the network, even without your knowing, everything will just upload. So that's what we're talking about. We need to believe in the system. And again, I call on Nigerians, wherever you are seated, you know, the media were all over there yesterday. You are doing a great job. I want to commend you, just like I commend the Nigerian police, you know, for the work that you did yesterday and that you've done over the years. And I think today reminds me of when we were watching the President Muhammadu Buhari of blessed memory, you know, watching him to sign that vote. And I did that I watched it from your studio when we saw him putting his pen and paper. I hope that now that we're saying, okay, the real time you are talking about, just put it there in plain language. That is what we're seeking for, and that's what it is about. Remember that they went into a series of retreats, you know, went into a series of discussions. The chairman of the committee, you know, each and every one of them, they did a great job on all of the bills that came out. And so let's move it on. So we hope that they will be responsible today to talk about what happens there. But I always say, carry along the issue of the 360 days. We can't have less days. All right.
Madam Obi, as we begin to wind down, this issue about real-time transmission or mandatory transmission of results from EC8A after it's been countersigned and uploaded, maybe blindsiding us on other issues. You've raised it, the issue of logistics, because I'm wondering, issue of even final list of candidates being submitted by political, everything has been crunched, and I don't know the reason why. Maybe the senators will be able to explain to us later. But let's do a bit of a scenario situation. What happens then? There are two parts now. I don't know whether at the point of harmonization, when the conference committee of both chambers meet, whether there can be a rephrasing of the language. I do not know. Maybe possible, maybe not possible, because normally what happens is an adoption of one over the other. Even the framing currently may have a bit of a challenge using the word IREV expressly without providing an alternative to IREV in case technology evolves in terms of rigidity. So where I'm going to with all of this, what will civil society do? What should Nigerians do if the Senate sticks to their guns and pass what Nigerians are saying, don't do that? Harmonization committee doesn't step on it to say, no, let's stay with Nigerians, the Nigerians that want electronic transmission. And then there's one more layer, the layer of whether or not the president will sign it into law.
Well, the scenario, I think what we are getting from the Senate is rather, I would say, is positive in the sense that, you know, if they already said that they were not against the electronic transmission. You know, so I don't see it not passing on the positive sense that Nigerians are watching them. One of the things we also want to do is that we want to know who votes for what. those who don't want electronic transmission, you know, those who are against transparency and accountability, we want to know each and every one of them. Not the yeas and nays. We want to know all the individuals that voted for what. You know, because when we, for you know, as a woman, I've been in the struggle for the special seats for women. When there is no transparency, the special seats are not, it's not going to work. But take it that they are not voting for it, they are not pulling it down. I think we should remove the self for it. Let's work for Nigeria. Stand upright for Nigeria, because if you vote that electronic transmission, you are building our system. Nigeria is not anywhere. The whole Africa is complaining. You have the largest unit of the black race in your country and should be fighting for them. But you are busying yourself with little things, so many things. I think it's just a distraction. We hope that they will act wisely, and then I think they know that Nigerians are confused because they want to use the language. It was the language usage that was in 2022 general election that made the last INEC chairman, you know, try to manipulate, you know, the language, because we told him, when we confronted him about the electronic transfer of the presidential election, and the National Assembly election, we confronted him. We heard he was going to use the guidelines, and we confronted. But he didn't, he said no, and you'll be surprised. Everything will be done on time and in real time. But what happened at the end of the day? He manipulated by using INEC guideline. How can INEC guideline supersede? But the other side of it is that nobody, you know, nobody is above the law. Manipulating it, what have you lived? We need to know that the world is a stage. Right. We are in the world. When the curtain closes, that's the end. You can't undo anything. Live your life. Stand and leave a mark for our children. The children are watching us. Watching adults playing with languages. Right. When there are we are raising younger generations. So we hope that they will vote rightly, or, you know, to pass the bill. They've done a lot of work, and I commend many of them. Commend them for the tireless working, because it's not easy to even craft a bill or to go through it and make sure that it works well. And so we hope that they will put it in a plain language, that there will be electronic transmission of results real time, and also we go back to time with, you know, the 360 days, not reducing the days, because you want to cause chaos and frustration and fraud.
Just before we go, final note, I want to try to maybe put this to bed, and it's for those who have alleged some sort of foreign influence, a third-party influence in this campaign to have electronic transmission in our electoral act. From where you stand from your own side, is there anything of such?
You see, I have worked, I used to be the country director of Action Aid Nigeria. I've been in development work for a very long time. I've not really worked with the Nigerian government. And so the international environment are the ones that are even seeking and spending the money we use for continuous education or civic education is coming from support that we're receiving from international development agencies. And then you had several retreats. Some of them were sponsored by the development partners because they want to. Do you know what it is when we write proposals to the development partners to help us sponsor, you know, things like discussions like this? You know, to take people on retreat. Do you know how many millions is spent? Why don't you spend your own money if you didn't want that? We are not saying that is the influence. For many of us who are working in development agencies, we make sure that nothing tampers with our Nigerianness. At our patriotic deals, you can write, there is a lot of money in the development world, you can apply for what you want, but if you are not convinced that they agree with your purpose, you will not apply for it. And so saying that people want, let us take the example of Germany. Germany is not using electronic transfer. Do you know that the German, the umpire, the electoral umpire for Germany is a card-carrying member of a political party? And the question, when we put the question to him, is like, my electoral umpire has nothing to do with my being an electoral umpire, because that's a professional job. That's a citizen's responsibility. And I do that and make sure that I carry out. And then we ask, why don't you, use electronic systems? He said, Germans trust Germans. more than, the machines. What that means is that the quality of their citizenship or the citizens is just up there, meaning that you are responsible, your total allegiance is to your government, is to your country. And so I want to say that for many of us who are activists that have worked in the development sector, even when we struggled, I give you an example of when the logistics was an issue. We asked the INEC chairman, that's Professor Mahmoud then, what is the major problem that you are facing? He said, it was logistics issues. I am telling you, with my team, we looked for donor agencies, anybody who will give us money to organize, a meeting on logistics. And we did this in Radisson Blu. This was in 2022.
Right.
Radisson Blu to make sure, bring everybody together. And I was so convinced that things will happen. Right. We brought in NACO. You can imagine an example of 2019 when NACO said, that's a National Aviation Handling Company, said they brought in, a 737 to Sokoto. And they got to Sokoto with a, with a crane, no crane was on ground. And so that meeting enabled us. They asked them, tell us which plane you are flying to which airport. Let's get it ready now. NACO and SACO. We had the National Association of Road Transport Owners, National Union of Road Transport Workers. Yes. We had the maritime people. We had all of them, under one roof, and we discussed and planned for the 2023 general election.
Well, we have
to make sure that logistics was not
for this insight. I think
no Nigerian government was ready to give us the money. Thank you so much.
I think it's great to have this insight, and that's an election, by the way, that we budgeted about $1 billion for. But Madam NLB, we have to thank you once again for your time. Former convener, Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. I know it's a big day for you, so we don't want to keep you because we understand that you have more war to fight, but hopefully you come out victorious. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and well done to you all and to the entire media, team as well.
Thank you. We'll continue doing our work. We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll stay with what the media has to say about all of the big stories with the dailies. Stay with us.
Mr. Feta Adini joins us. He's the publisher of the Megastar magazine. Joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Feta, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's binge through the headlines as quickly as we can. This Nigeria is where we'll get started from. Gunmen abduct 9 worshippers in Benue. Tinubu vows to put an end to banditry terrorism. So it looks like there are different shades. It depends on what you're looking at. On one hand, we saw the massacre of our brothers and sisters in Kwara State, and then not so long after that, we saw the release of abductees in Kaduna, and then we're seeing this, and the president is still talking about his ambition to end this madness by these terrorists. Sefetayo.
Yes, well, it's just unfortunate that sometimes, like I said in this forum, that in this platform, that instead of us to be proactive, we do what they call reactive. We react to whatever event that has happened, in as much as, oh, we thank God, or we say, oh, the president has done a good job, for those our brothers or citizens that were released in Kaduna by those people who held them hostage, and for another one to happen in Benue, another one to happen and in Kogi State and all of that. It's just for them to be more proactive. We've said that when something happens and you do nothing, it's already assumed that you have already planned to fail as well. So I don't think the government, they are doing enough if you need more manpower, recruit, if you need to deploy in some strategic area, I know you have your black points that you need, you think that you can beef up security. So those are the things I think they should do, but I just hope that they do more than what they have been doing before, because we continue to get the same results. You can't be doing the same thing and expect different results. So you must look inward. Just like I said, they've been talking about state police. We have not seen where that one has unfolded in the past few months, or they've discussed it last year. They'll still give it a talk and all of that. So those are the things that can be put in place to check and to maximize the effect of our security, or whether policing or keeping the nation safe, so that everybody can go about their lawful job. Or you want to worship, you won't have fear that you'll be attacked or you'll be kidnapped.
Well, take a look at the Vanguard newspaper, Mr. Vetayo. Leads with what's playing out at the Senate and what will play out today. Electoral Act. Senate open to criticism. Will resolve issue today. That's credited to the Senate spokesman, and you see all of the explainers and different angles to this story. A lot of them we've spoken to already, but I just want to make well, prominent the story just right under it that says Nigeria will continue borrowing to fund 25.91 trillion naira budget deficit. That's also coming from the Senate, incidentally, as NAS vows not to approve further budget rollovers and subsidies. So, two messagings coming from the Senate. Which one do you want to speak to?
Yes. Yeah, let me take from the last one. Nigeria continue to borrow to fund the deficit. You know, sometimes when, even in business, when you are not making profit, or whether you want to break even or you want to look at your costs, you should look at this thing inwardly, and most especially leadership, you know, is by example. I've not seen what the National Assembly are saying about their allowances. I've not seen what the executive are saying about their allowances or overhead costs, and say, look, because we don't want to plunge Nigeria into debt, or our future generation into debt, we are going to reduce, you know, our take-home by 50%. I'm sure President Muhammadu Buhari, of a blessed memory, you know, when he came into power, where he said, my take-home or my basic, I'll be going on with 50%. So those are the ways they can cost some cost, and as well, just like for the Senate chair on appropriation, saying that they will not allow any agency or ministry, you know, for them to exceed 31st of December for their budget implementation. And you also saw another side, the Minister of Health saying that out of 200 and something billion for capital expenditure, whatever it is, they only got 39 million. All these things should be looking into. Is the money being released? Who is holding it? Who is not releasing it? You know, those are the things they need to look into, and to make sure that the little resources that or taxpayers' money are judiciously used. So let's see what the future will hold for us, because we can't continue to borrow, you know, to fund the money that will end up in a private pocket.
Let's go to the New Telegraph newspaper, and it's leading with economic conversation. Nigeria at a crossroads, facing structural macroeconomic challenges. That's credited to President Bola Tinubu. That's a page 345 read on the New Telegraph. The riders seeks inclusive growth or sustainable national development. Senate, Nigeria will continue to borrow to fund 25.9 trillion budget deficit. Economic growth must be felt at the grassroots, Shatima tell governor. So there's a lot that has happened, and this is going to be a major argument during the campaign season as to what the government has done and what the people are feeling. So that argument is going to ensue. But what's your interpretation of what you just saw, led by the New Telegraph newspaper?
Yes, first and foremost, I think most of the state executive, I mean governors, they are not doing enough. We are still discussing about some states holding on to local government allocation, you know, when the Supreme Court has already ruled on local government autonomy And because that is where the grassroots is, the local government, they are the closest to the people. When you are holding on to their location, they are not feeling no primary health care services, no, the people at the grassroots, they are not feeling it. Even if the government at the federal level, they are doing their bit, reducing the number, the inflation and all of that. If they are not feeling it at the grassroots level, they can't get a pass mark. And just like you said, it's going to be part of the conversation that what you have done in the last 3 or 4 years for you to deserve another vote from Nigeria. And so I think the government also, they need to buckle up and do more to make sure that you are the president. The majority of these governors, they belong to your party. Talk to them. There's a court judgment. Release this fund so that the people can feel the impact, so that they can do so many things. People can feel the dividend of democracy in their locality, and not an executive that will spend 4 days in Abuja and 3 days in his own state. I don't see where the state or the people at the local level will feel the impact of the governor. So, Mr. President, you need to call most of the governors into order, obey the court judgment, and let the people feel your impact. Just like Shetima said, that whatever economy, whatever thing you say you are doing, the people must feel the impact. What Lagos State need at the local government level is different from what Benue State need at the local government level. But when they have their resources, they will know how to manage it judiciously. You can just do a supervisory, you can just play a role of supervisor to see what they are doing to make sure that it aligns with your agenda or what the people need.
Mr. Feta, thank you so much for your views. You made mention of something that I was smiling. You know, we have FCT resident governors, the governors that live in Abuja more than they live in their state. But that's a conversation for another day. But it's a shame. We must thank you. Adeni Fetayo is the CEO of Megastar Magazine, a journalist. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right. We'll switch gears now to something else, Coyote.
Oh, absolutely. Just last week, you had the NNPCL GMD saying about the Port Harcourt Refinery that we were just wasting money. It wasn't delivering value. And this is coming after there was a lot of celebration around the Port Harcourt Refinery, the opening. Celebration, of course, went into controversy about whether it was blending or not. And things just dragged on. There was a temporary closure for maintenance. And people were wondering, I thought we just opened this refinery. Why are we maintaining it? But now it's been said by the NNPCL Group Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Bayo Ojulari, that we were just wasting money. The refineries were leaking value, and there was no clear line of sight on how those losses would ever turn into profit. So we thought, let's have this conversation. And we're joined on the program by Comrade Festus Osifo of a Trade Union Congress in PENGASSAN. Comrade Osifo, thank you for your patience on the program. We had to deal with other important national issues, but it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Coyote. Good morning, Jeffrey. Nice to be with you.
Well, I don't know how that statement hits you. I know you've had to meet with the NNPC boss. You've done a lot of visits. You've spoken about this time and again. So does this come to you as a surprise, hearing that the Port Harcourt Refinery was just a waste of money? They were leaking value in the sense, and I'm talking about the general refineries in the country. Is that a surprise to you? Are you shocked?
No, Coyote. We weren't really shocked per se because we have been following the trajectory regarding the history of the Port Harcourt Refinery vis-a-vis the rehabilitation that was going on. So it wasn't really, it didn't really come as a shock to us. In fact, what is being proposed today has been the position of PENGASSAN for close to 20 years. That has been the position of PENGASSAN for about 20 years now. For you to run the refinery successfully, that what we must do is that we must bring about an LNG model. I remember in your program that over and over and over again, we've actually talked about the NLNG model. Even when the Mele Kiaris team, when they were rehabilitating the refinery, what we have said is that after the rehabilitation, that what you must do is that you must bring in technical partners who are refiners all over the world. It could be one, it could be two, for them to buy into the stake of the refinery, so that government will reduce their shareholding in the refinery or their equity in the refinery to maximum 49%. And the investors, the core investors, will have 51%. So that in making decisions, there will not be politics politics will not be part of decision making of making the refinery functioning. So that has been our position. And today, from our conversation with Engineer Bayo Ojulari, he told us clearly that advocacy that we have been advocating in the past years, that is the direction they want to go today. Really, in terms of the refinery losing value, yes. You know, what was actually done was the old Port Harcourt refinery. The new one was still under rehabilitation. The operating philosophy of the refinery before now is that you feed in crude into the old refinery and you also feed in crude into the new refinery. But at a point, the old refinery was not supposed to produce the final petroleum product. It is now supposed to feed into the new refinery that will now produce the final product. So having the old refinery functioning, it was, if you look at the material balance, what comes in and what goes out, it wasn't really profitable. Until the new refinery will start functioning, that is where you will see some level of profitability.
So exactly where are we with the refinery? As a matter of fact, I don't think any of them is functional now. I know that, I think he was being interviewed by Bloomberg, Engineer Ojulari, where he was asked straight questions as to the status of the refinery and what will be done. I know he mentioned in that conversation that I heard, selling it is on the table, but at that material point in time, there was no final decision. Now we're here where the alternative has to be to sell it, what maybe President Obasanjo tried to do, and now he's been vindicated that that was the right action. So you are an engineer, so you understand the technical workings of the refinery. The argument, so let me bring a layman's point of view. When it started, there were all kinds of shifting of timelines as to when the refinery would start operations. Eventually, we celebrated the onset of that refinery, and then the controversy ensued that it was blending using C5 and all of that. Well, for me, I described it as we gave you money to buy limousine, you went to buy us, you know, a smaller car. But mobility is still mobility, one way or the other. So help us understand what exactly is the state of, let's use one example, just one, Port Harcourt refinery. Why did we get to the point where we say, no, as a government, this is way too much, we spend too much money?
Yes, Jeffrey, as of today, you can start the old Port Harcourt refinery and it will function, all right? You can put it on today and it will function. But, you know, NNPCL as a company, NNPC Limited, they are there to make profit, all right? So the old Port Harcourt refinery, if they want to start it today, maybe within the next 1 week, they can bring it back to life. Because it's been rehabilitated up to about 90%. But the challenge was that when you bring it to life, let's assume you feed in crude worth, let's say, $5 million into the refinery, the old Port Harcourt refinery. What you are going to get at the other end when you sell the petroleum product will likely be maybe $4.5 million. So you feed in crude of $5 million input, then the output, you are getting $4.5 million as a product. The reason is because there are a lot of complexities that are in the old Port Harcourt refinery in such a way that as of today, the product that comes out from it, it produces naphtha, it produces AGO, which is called diesel. It also produces kerosene, which is called DPK. So now you now need to take that naphtha and subject it to a lot of other activities to get PMS. So finally, in the material balance, when you feed in $5 million worth of material, you are going to get 4.5. So it was operating at a loss. Then that is the old one. Then the new Port Harcourt Refinery, as at when the operation, everything was stopped, from what we were told by the contractor and those that were supposed to fix the refineries, and from our own assessment, it was between 70 to 80%, brought back to life. As in, they were still on the phase of rehabilitation of the new one. So, as at today, because I've listened to a lot of things in the press, as if the money that was thrown in is at a loss. No, really, it's not. Because if you look at the old Port Harcourt Refinery, they changed almost all the compressors, they fixed almost all the, the control room is the panels and all that, they were all changed, the turbines, they were all changed. So those things, the contractors are not taking them away. In fact, the value of the refinery today, if you value it today, it will be much more valuable today compared to the state that it was before the rehabilitation started. So what do I mean? If before, let's say in 2020, if you want to value the refinery, for example, it could be $3 or $4 million. But today, with the state that it is today, if you are to value it today, it could be valued for maybe somewhere around $8 to $9 million. These are just estimates. So what am I trying to say? That the money that was pumped in did not really go down the drain, because it has actually brought back the refinery from 0% to maybe about 60, 70, 80% averagely today. So the new Port Harcourt refinery, you can switch it on.
Yes,
yeah.
My apologies. So I like your analogy because I want it to be as simple as possible for lay people who are not engineers. So the analogy of investing, just for an example, putting in a $5 million crude and getting out 4.5. What happened? Is it that, because I know that Mr. Julari had complained that one of the problems was to start operation without complete rehabilitation. Is that the problem? And if private investors are coming in to buy, what exactly are they buying?
Okay, thank you so much, Jeffrey. Yes, what Engineer Bayo Julari said is actually correct. The operating philosophy of the old Port Harcourt refinery, there are two, the old and the new. So the old Port Harcourt refinery ought to feed, will serve as, it's not supposed to give the final product. It's supposed to still feed the new refinery. So it was a bit technically not correct for you to have started the old refinery as when it was started. The best engineering model was what was obtainable in the past. Get the two rehabilitated, start the two at the same time. So if you had started both of them at the same time, what would have happened was that we would have been producing PMS, because PMS is much more profitable when compared to DPK and DPK, naphtha and kerosene and AGO. It's much more profitable. So if you had rehabilitated both at the same time, then it could have been better off. But what they failed to do then, because probably they were under pressure. Okay, let's get the old one fixed while we'll still maintain a new one. Because the lead time of getting some of the parts in maintaining the new one was maybe like 3-4 years, much more. So they were like, okay, let's get the old one fixed while we still place our eyes on the new one. So that was actually what happened. So Engineer Bayo Julari, the GCO NNPC is actually also right, because what could have been done was, let's get both of them fixed at the same time, they start operation at the same time, in order to return back to the old philosophy, like you said. What are they actually buying? Yes, today, from what we understand, is not to sell to 100% stake in the refinery. We have said it over and over again, that the best model that should be brought to bear is equity sale. So you sell equity up to about 51%, just as it is applicable today in NLNG, where you have Shell, where you have ENI, popularly referred to as RGIP in the past. So where you have ENI, where you have Total Energies. The three of them combined, they have 51% stake in NLNG. Government has 49%. The reason is strategically important for government to have stake in a place like NLNG and the refinery is to guarantee energy security. So the refiner that they are currently talking to, from our understanding, is to get the majority stake in the refinery. And we have advocated for this for over 20 years. Because today in NLNG, If you want to make decision, if you are taking investment decision, oh, which project are we going to invest in, all right? If you are saying, oh, we want to do maintenance in NLNG, you don't need government to approve anything, because the three private sector people, when they come together, they have 51%. Right. So when it comes to voting in the board, they have 51% vote. That means at every point in time, they can make commercial decisions. So this is actually what we've advocated for over the years. And that allow, get the refinery up to a state, but you bring in qualified people, not to be sold to friends, not to be sold to cronies, not to be sold to people who does not have the wherewithal on how to get refinery to work. And we've advocated that go and bring people who have invested in refineries all over the world, people who knows how to maintain and how to operate refineries. You bring them in, sell minimum 51% equity to them, right, and allow them to come in and to run the refinery. Well, and that is where we are headed to today.
There are a lot of people who believe that Nigeria was swindled with these refineries, the rehabilitation, the $3 billion crude loan, right, that was taken by the previous head and administration of the NNPCL, Melekiari. And I'm sure you followed some of the trends, the monies that have been spent, 2023, 2024, about 13 trillion naira was spent on those refineries. We've not even gone into 2025, right? We've not seen the figures. So see the sheer money that was poured into it, and we hear that it's losing $500 million consistently. So a lot of people see that and say, wait a minute, is someone taking Nigeria and Nigerians for a ride? How can you spend that much money? A lot of them you're still repaying with crude, and we have literally nothing to show for it, because if your business is making a loss after all of that investment, it means that really, you wasted money in that sense. And I want you to speak to the role of PENGASSAN, because a lot of people have then looked back, said when OBJ wanted to sell 51%, PENGASSAN was against it. He did it anyway. But then Yaradua came and reversed it, and PENGASSAN rejoiced. And when it was time to begin to spend all this much money on the refineries, $3 billion, the PENGASSAN kept quiet. So I want you to speak to the role of the union, seeing these things. Do you frown at any action taken by the previous heads of NNPC in terms of rehabilitation that is not yielding as much?
Kayode, let it be on record, and I think I have appeared in this your station over and over again, where we have been shouting that the best thing to do in terms of our refinery is to bring about the NLNG model, whereby we don't want government to sell the refinery 100%. Because, okay, look at today, the Dangote refinery. So imagine if government has a stake up to 40% in the refinery. So what that means is that it goes a long way in guaranteeing some level of energy security. So what we have said is that, and I said for the past 20 years, if you calculate 20 years from today, is somewhere around 2006. I could remember when Peter Esele was the president of PENGASSAN, that was when we started advocating for bringing about the NLNG model in running the refinery. So clearly for us, it's been very clear to us, because we have had a system that works. NLNG works. The arrangement we have in NLNG has been profitable, whereby dividends are turned to government year in, year out. So because that model had worked, we had advocated for that model over the years. They're coming down to what has been spent in the refinery without holding forth for NNPC, because, I mean, we are trade unions trying to push them and pressure them to get the refineries to work, but without holding forth. But our understanding is this. Kayode, you could have a car. So this particular car that you have had, you have parked your car for 5 years. And that car is, I mean, you cannot start it, you cannot move it, you know, the tires are all flat. If you value that car as 5 years ago, they could tell you that the salvage value of a car is about, let's say, ₦1 million. And somewhere down the line, you change the tires of a car, all right? You change the engines of a car. You panel-beat the car and you respray the car. Then once you do that, the value, then let's assume that the final intention is to now get the car on the road. And you are starting it, now it's moving, but it cannot fire the way it ought to fire. So now, a car that was valued 1 million naira 5 years ago, as of today, when you bring buyers to look at that car is going to be valued maybe somewhere around 3-4 million. Because they are going to look at the tires. Oh, the tires are new, all right? The engine was just changed, you know, from maybe a 1995 model engine to a recent one. So the valuation will now be done based on the current state. So the car that was less valuable before is now much more valuable. So that is the eye, or that is the lens with which we will look at the state of refineries from. Remember, the rehabilitation was still ongoing. I mean, from the discussion with our members that are in that facility, the rehabilitation by Tekimo was still ongoing. The contract was not really terminated, but it was stopped and said, okay, let's do the evaluation. So the new Port Harcourt refinery, the contract is still running with Tekimo, who ought to fix it and bring it to limelight.
But
so from our estimation, it's not really a wastage as of today,
right,
but it's a continuous process. Yeah.
So the argument is, see, the money that was spent to rehabilitate the scrap vehicle in that sense could have been spent towards building another one, like a fresh refinery that we can then be sure that at least this refinery would operate, not the fixing of the scrap and painting it where you're driving and you realize that, oh, the injector is bad, you fix the injector, you drive a little bit, the headlamps is bad, you fix the headlamps, you drive a little bit, and you keep finding those challenges, which is what a lot of people have described this Port Harcourt refinery as particularly. So wouldn't that have made sense, really, to have pumped that money to build a new one? You mentioned the Dangote refinery. In fact, a lot of people have said, wouldn't it have been wiser for PENGASSAN, for example, to pitch your tent with Dangote refinery supported? Because obviously it was more viable, right, than these scrap refineries, in that sense that we're now spending more money just to boost the value. I hope you catch my drift, comrade.
Yes, Kayode, if you look at it clearly, the cost of building a refinery, you know, okay, maybe you could ask Dangote, what was the cost of building the 650,000 barrels refinery?
It was about $20 billion.
He would tell you that clearly it wasn't $1.5 billion, for example, that was spent in Port Harcourt refinery. No. Or that is being spent currently.
$20 billion, comrade. But if you aggregate what has been spent on refurbishing, rehabilitating, turnaround maintenance of our refineries, comrade, believe me, aggregating them together between $10–15 billion, that would do a lot towards building a new refinery.
Okay, so as of today, aggregating what has been spent in the 3 refineries. Remember, the 3 refineries is about 450,000 barrels, all right? So aggregating what has been spent there in the last 10 years, I am not sure that it is up to $10 billion in any way. Because what was happening in the past, outside this recent rehabilitation, every single time you were hearing about turnaround maintenance, they'd never be cashed back. All you hear is just like road. You hear tomorrow, oh, government has awarded road between Warri and Port Harcourt. And at the end, they only release maybe like 5% of the value. And the other ones are never released. So from our estimation, we've had a lot of turnaround maintenances, but if you find out as an investigating journalist, you will discover that they've never really been cashed back. That it was more or less just a political gimmick. The only time you have in the last 15 years that you've really had those refineries being maintained how it ought to be is in the last 5 years from 2021 till date. So aggregate, what has gone in there, I don't think, and we don't also think from our estimation that it will go anywhere in building a new refinery. But we strongly believe that this refinery would work. We strongly believe with the right will, and having people, international partners who have operated refineries all over the world are coming in. The reason, not that we don't have people that have expertise in Nigeria. We have people who understand what to do. But the challenge is this. When you subject it to Nigerians, the problem we are having is the political interferences that do come every now and then. Remember, when those refineries were awarded, they went to Federal Executive Council. So naturally, look at NLNG. when they were about to build the current train that they are building, did you hear that it went to Federal Council meeting? The answer was a no, it did not. And that is how businesses are run. You don't subject those kind of operations, most especially the refineries that have very tiny margins. You don't subject them to a lot of political considerations here and there. And that is why we have advocated in the last 20 years that bringing refiners to buy at least 51% equity in those refineries. We strongly believe that it will work. The refineries, yes, they've been brought to a very large extent to a position whereby with little push, they could work. And having these people come in to take at least 51% stake in the refinery is going to boost the operations and the maintenance of that refinery. And the Nigerian government would not carry all the weight alone anymore. And it will not be subjected to a lot of political gimmicks, political gymnastics, and political somersaults that we've had over the years.
Well, comrade, I still insist, looking at the figures, particularly the 9th Assembly, the House of Reps, just before this government came in, they put the figure that Nigeria has spent fixing the country's 3 moribund refineries in the past 10 years at that time at 11.35 trillion naira, which is in fact $25 billion. And they said that, you know, there must be a probe. Although they were doing it, they were putting out the figure when they were leaving. But that is the official figure we have from Nigeria's parliament. So it's either you're saying they were lying, they don't have their figures correct, or indeed, they were correct.
Kyle, you've heard severally when the assemblies, they will shout, oh, that a particular government agency, there was a time they said NUPROC, that they were owing government, is it 20 or 30 trillion? So at the end of the day, what came out from it? So for me, those are still politics. Those are politics that I don't want to get myself involved in because I understand what goes on in that system. So for us, we are fixated in what the professionals are saying, not really what the politicians are saying, because that's laden with politics from our belief.
So you said that is not true.
$25 billion is huge.
So you don't think that is true?
I can boastfully say that that is completely wrong.
So what figure do you think is right then, comrade?
Yes. So, like as I said, in the last years, okay, I have a friend that was employed in the refinery in 2007. He has been in the refinery since he was employed in NNPC. That is 19 years ago. So in our interrogation, I mean, he said that he has not seen any turnaround maintenance in that refinery until what started happening in 2021. So where we could tie government majorly is the last rehabilitation that I think Port Harcourt Refinery was about $1.5 billion, if my memory serves me right. For me, that is where we could start holding government. Every other one before then, if they had released money, I could tell you that that money never got to rehabilitate. That money never got to turning around the refinery. In fact, the refinery was actually shut down because of lack of maintenance. So if they've released money to the refinery in the last 10, 15 years, we wouldn't have been where we are today. Maybe you can interview people that work in NNPC directly. They will tell you that for 20 years, they have never seen the level of work that they saw in the last 3 to 4 years, whereby if you go to Port Harcourt Refinery before this current maintenance was put on hold, you will see over 1,000 to 2,000 employees, contracting staff that are working there. I mean, people that are rehabilitating on a daily basis. You will see filter, you will see maintenance engineers, you will see welders, you see a lot of them working there. So that level of maintenance has never been seen in the last 20 years in that refinery. These are accounts of people that have worked in there day in, day out for the last 19 to 20 years. So every other one that you've heard, you know, if we are doing calculation, it's just as if, like the East-West Road I've talked about, you know, somebody could come and say, oh no, Obasanjo government awarded the road. Yaradua government did the same thing. Goodluck government, Buhari government, and now where are we still spending money? But if you do your studies and your findings, you are going to discover that when Obasanjo government actually awarded it, they may have awarded it and they may have announced, let's say, 200 billion naira. But over time, you will not realize that out of that 200 billion, maybe it's only 5 billion that was released. Then the next government will come, re-award it again, and give out maybe about 10%. But if we are to calculate, we will go back and see, okay, how much did the Obasanjo government awarded? 200 billion. Oh, Jonathan government awarded it again, maybe with another 500 billion. We'll start adding them together, and it gives you that aggregate. But if you go down the money release, you will discover that it's not actually the way it ought to be. So for us, the first time we are seeing the real rehabilitation and real work going on in that refinery was what started happening somewhere around 2021. That clearly the value of that refinery today has increased, but all we want is that government must bring about NLNG model in the operation and maintenance of that refinery, because NLNG had worked, and we strongly believe that this will also work. This has been our advocacy for at least 20 years.
Mr. Sifo, as we begin to wind down, let's talk about what has been personal concern for me, and that is the production output of our sector. Annualized 2024 should be about 1.3. Annualized 2025 should be about 1.34. 2025, 1.4. I'm talking about crude oil, not condensate, in terms of production output, based on the number that's been released by the NUPLC. And this is critical because it's our biggest earner in terms of foreign exchange. And we're grateful for the numbers we're seeing. Even though it's a managed float, we're seeing the Naira is gaining strength. We're talking about less than 1,400. So there's stability. On the other hand, we also have high interest rates. But my question is, from your expert point of view, why is it difficult for us to increase our production output?
Yes, very, very, very valid question, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. You know, before now, the major challenge that we've had in the Niger Delta is actually because of the pipeline vandalization. So that grossly has affected the output, because a lot of companies that are operating in that region, they started shutting in their production. Like my company, for example, Total Energies, company that I work for, we in one of our fields in Obagi, we literally produce. Then when we produce crude, we take the gas out, we inject the crude back into the well, because there was no use putting the crude into the pipeline and it will not get to its destination. So we were reinjecting the crude back into the well while exporting the gas. So a lot of companies that were operating in the onshore and shallow waters, that was exactly what they were doing. So that literally brought down our production. But today, thank God, you know, the pipeline have almost 98% integrity today. The crude are flowing, so that has actually contributed to the output level that we are seeing. Yes, correct. Today, Nigeria as a country, with about 37 billion barrels of proven reserves, we have no business doing about 1.5 million barrels of crude per day. And Nigeria as a country, we should be projecting to hit somewhere around 3 million barrels per day. Do we have the right technology? The answer is yes. But the challenge as of today is, I mean, they are largely due to one, investment. Because a lot of the companies that have the financial wherewithal to start developing new fields, today they are divesting from onshore and shallow offshore and moving towards the deep water. That is actually the direction that they are going today. So now, you've heard what Shell has said in Bonga Southwest and Bonga North. You've also heard as well Total Energies and the new investments that they are going into. So it's actually investment. When with the right investment, we have the proven reserves that we could use in increasing our production. Then secondly as well, the marginal fields. You know, licenses have been given out recently to a lot of marginal field operators. But what we have advocated as PENGASSAN is that give the licenses to people that have both the financial muscles as well as the technical capacity to be able to bring the crude beneath the soil to the surface. Because there's no use in giving out licenses to portfolio investors or to people who literally does not have the technical ability and may not even have the financial muscle. You know, the crude, the oil and gas business is very, very expensive business. Right. I mean, to rent a rig in deep water at times, you may spend over $1 million per day. And you will keep this rig at times in the field for over 3 to 4 months. So it's a very expensive business that we all know about. So before you give out licenses, you must be sure that the financial and the technical ability are there. So currently, the IOCs, most of them, you heard what happened to Shell. They divested their JV, SPDC sold to Renaissance. You heard what happened to ENI, Ajib. They sold their JV operations largely. They sold to Oando. The same thing also happened ExxonMobil. You know, they broke into two. I mean, they had the ESSO now, and they have sold the JV part of their investment. They sold to Seplat. So Seplat, Renaissance may not have the kind of financial capacity that their principals have. So what that means is that in a particular field, if you are producing crude, after about 4, 5, 6, 8 years, you need to drill some other wells. You need to carry out a lot of activities, stimulation, well prep to enhance the well and improve the performances of the well. But these are capital intensive, and it becomes a challenge. That was why when government was passing PIA, our advocacy as PENGASSAN, then we had meetings with all the principal officers in National Assembly. We had meetings up to, I mean, the ad hoc committee chair, trying to advocate, trying to let them understand that, see, what we could do as a country is that we must incentivize production. Don't look at the quick wins that you are going to get today from PIA. No, look at the long-term strategic plan. What are those things that we are going to do today in order to bring investment? Because crude literally is found almost everywhere in Africa today. Before now, you could count Nigeria, you count Angola, count Congo, count very few Gabon, and very few countries. But today, literally everywhere. You go to Ghana, you go to Senegal, you go to Cote d'Ivoire. There is crude literally everywhere.
Oh, come
so, okay.
Pardon me, I know this is a very important conversation because it's like the lifeblood of our economy, and it's interesting the way you've laid out the issues. And you are in a very interesting position because you not only, I mean, speak for natural resources, right, crude oil, you also speak for human resources as well. So I think you kind of wear those caps very efficiently, which is why we're going to wind down with this question. Some have said this is a perfect time to renegotiate Nigeria's minimum wage of 70,000 naira in the build-up to elections. This is when you can get government's commitment. But more importantly, the economic situation, right? How would someone earning 70,000 naira monthly be able to afford accommodation, feeding? If you have children, you send them to school all the way. So is that conversation going to happen? And what are we looking at, comrade, as we wind down?
Yes, for us, really, that was why we started talking about living wage. If you remember the last minimum wage conversation we had, we started talking about living wage. How would the wage that a Nigerian worker actually earn, how would that wage be able to take care of the things that you have listed? The basic necessity of life, housing, food, clothing. How will this be able to take care of them? So that was actually our conversation. And that was one of the reasons. Even when the 70,000 naira came, for us, it was abysmally poor. But with government saying that, okay, instead of every 5 years, we have to bring it down. We have to bring it down to 3 years. And that 3 years is next year. But if you look at our New Year message from TUC, for example, we are pushing government. And we are having some conversations with them, trying to make them understand, yes, we have the minimum wage. Yes, minimum wage is supposed to be someone on grade level 1, step 1. Which means the very basics. So that means someone who has a school certificate is supposed to be in grade level 4. While minimum wage of 70,000 is grade level 1, step 1, really in the civil service, there's nobody actually in grade level 1, step 1. So if with secondary certificate, which they normally employ the minimum person from or with, you are supposed to start from grade level 4. But as we said, the challenge was it. Even that minimum of 70,000, most of the states did not apply the consequential adjustment properly. If the consequential adjustment was applied properly, someone in grade level 4 would have been earning close to about 200,000 naira plus today. That means with secondary school certificate, you start work today, you will be earning 200,000 naira plus. But what we have done from TUC is that we are pushing government that, okay, even before the next minimum wage conversation takes place next year, you must provide for economic adjustment allowance. So all the workers, both in state and the federal government, you know, there must be a cushioning allowance in order to cushion the effect of the harsh economic environment before we get to next year where the minimum wage conversation will take place again.
How much is the cushioning allowance?
For us, we are proposing 200,000 naira.
Aside the 70,000 naira? Or...
Yes, Yes, it's an allowance. It's a proposal from us because government will always tell you that it's a bit easier to pay allowances because it doesn't go to pension. Right. It doesn't go to other factors that the salaries goes into. So that is why we're actually pushing this to see where it could end. So we'll be having a meeting with them very soon to further the conversation.
And we'll be following that conversation. We have to thank you so much, Comrade Festus Osifa, for your time, and wish you the very best as always.
Thank you, Kayode. Thank you, Jeffrey. Have a great day.
We'll take a quick break now. When we return, the Cityboy movement is next on our lineup. What is it about? Find out in a moment.
Welcome back. The build-up begins, and let's bring in our guest on the program. She is a journalist turned politician, former deputy governorship candidate in the Cross River State 2023 governorship election, and of course now national publicity secretary of the Cityboy movement. Emana Amawe, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeffrey. Good to see you.
You know, I was just trying to process my head.
As well.
Yeah, I tried to process in my head. I said, okay, on one hand, years ago, I was sitting side by side with Emana on News Track. Now we're sitting on opposite side to talk politics. So it's good to see you after a very long time.
That's the evolution.
Yes, that's the evolution. So let's talk about Cityboy movement. So the conversation right now, if you look at just at the face value, people see this as Tinubu's movement to ensure his father's re-election. This is another political movement to re-engineer the youth to support the president. But these are things that we can deduce from what we see. But what exactly is the Cityboy movement really all about? Because from the Cityboy movement, there has been a lot of controversy recently by some of the appointed, I think it's the ambassadors now, I'm not sure of the designation that was given to certain persons across different states.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll start first by saying that the Cityboy movement is not about celebrity optics. It's not just a political tool. Rather, it's a vehicle for nation building. Of course, the founder of the Cityboy movement is the son of the president, Barrister Tinubu. Yes, but it's beyond him as a person. It's about youth inclusion, mass mobilization, making the youth understand that their voice matters, their votes count. Then that translates to, of course, supporting the cause of the president's renewed hope agenda. But most importantly, it's telling the young people who have complained over time that they've not been carried along. It's been business as usual. The same old politicians recycle themselves. And rather than sitting on the sidelines to complain, or these days being keypad warriors, throw your hat in the ring, be an active mobilizer, and then support tangible reform for a better Nigeria. That's what the Cityboy movement is all about.
Interesting. At least you've given us a perspective. So let's project. We're going to come back to the premise you provided for us. So we can look back. So maybe do an assessment for us. The president had made certain promises in his renewed hope agenda. It is an 80-page document that we all were privy to as to the representation of young persons. So if you were to do an analytics of that representation as against what it is today, do you think the president has fulfilled his promise? Okay, so I'll start by saying that since the inception of the Nigerian democracy in 1999, no other president has appointed as many young people into his cabinet. In some instances, not necessarily in the Federal Executive Council, but no other president has appointed this many young people into government offices. So yes, I'd say that there's room for improvement, of course, but the president has performed quite fairly in that regard.
So now that we're talking about the president's performance, because I think that's what you'll be selling to people, right? He's called the City Boy. So a lot of people want to hear, what has the City Boy exactly done for us? And I think for a lot of people, the most important thing will be security. And I wonder, how are you going to sell this president to communities that have been attacked? Take Waro community, for example, or the church in Benue State where 9 parishioners were kidnapped in that vigil, or the community also in Benue State where about 13 people were killed in the market. How are you going to sell Cityboy to them, particularly those in the hinterlands who don't really have that experience of city or the Cityboy?
Okay, so I'll start by saying that the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not unaware of the pressures the citizens face on a daily basis. It's a government that listens to feedback. But most importantly, we need to understand that Nigeria is in a reform reset phase. Most of the distortions that we've seen in the system over time did not emanate from the government of President Tinubu. There have been systemic distortions in place over time. So the president is actively working. You know, we see with the 2026 appropriation bill that is currently before the National Assembly that a good percentage has been dedicated to defense. And definitely work is ongoing to ensure that Nigerians feel safe, because outside, most importantly, the citizens need to feel secure. But where there is insecurity, it affects investors' confidence as well, and ultimately dovetails into, affecting our economy negatively. So definitely I'd say that the president is listening. While Nigerians demand change or expect change, what needs to be done is closing the timeline between implementation and the work that is ongoing.
And I imagine they will ask you, for how long more do we have to wait? Promises have been made time and again. And just yesterday, the president made yet another promise. And I know you've probably had to answer these questions, but these are the real issues that people are facing. So it's not like you're detached, because for a lot of people, they just see through it and say, well, we know you're trying to just get re-elected. But our lives is not about election or re-election. Our lives are at stake here, on the line in that sense. So how do you try to sell that in such a way that people believe you?
Okay, just as I said, there's been systemic distortion over time. Insecurity in Nigeria, that we are facing as of today didn't just happen overnight. So 2.5 years, yes, we can argue it's been long enough time, but when you compare where we are coming from and where we are now, you'd actually realize that time and process has to happen. The thing is work being done? Yes. All government needs to do is ensure that, security policies bordering around security of life and property and safety of citizens, that moves beyond paperwork to actually trickling down to Nigerians in the streets and in their houses. We all walk the streets, we all live in our houses, and I can assure you that we all want to sleep with our eyes closed. And even the president, cannot afford to act unaffected or be detached, because where insecurity is rife, I can assure you that no matter how high up there you think you are, at the end of the day, the Nigeria we have as it is today, one united entity, will be unsafe for every one of us, including Mr. President himself. So reform, reset phase. Reform is always painful, or can be painful, but most times necessary. The thing is, work is in progress. If work is not in progress, then it would be another narrative entirely, to be a totally different kettle of fish.
We're going to come back to the numbers in terms of macroeconomics and how it impacts the people. I want to go back to something the president said. So let's look at a bit of data. The last election, from the 4 bigs, I call them the big 4, or 3 to 4 big candidates that contested in the last election, adding Robio Kwanko. So we're talking about the president got 8.7 million votes. The others got cumulatively, let's call it an approximate of 14 million votes. So if you want to look at the numbers, more people did not want him to be president, but he won the majority, at least as a single vote, and that doesn't invalidate his legitimacy. But he said, there are people that support the president like you and every other person within the Cityboy movement. But the president is also very hated in Nigeria. From his mouth to listening ears, he said it in Benue. He said, he hates me like hell. And so there's a question of love for the president, hate for the president, and belief in the president. What narrative exactly would the Cityboy movement be pushing to people to be able to support the president if he understands that he's being hated as much as he confessed that he's being hated?
Well, it's only normal that in life you cannot please everybody. You know, there's a popular saying that if you want everybody to be happy with you, perhaps you should be selling ice cream. You know, Mr. President is all about development, economic renewal, institutional strengthening, creating opportunities, which is also part of the vision of the Cityboy movement, impact awareness, mass mobilization, youth inclusion, while, of course, driving votes. So it's in as much as Mr. President, you know, the votes of the two candidates, the other candidates put together surpassed Mr. President's votes. Mr. President, you know, eventually got elected into office. Is he working towards reform? Yes. Reform is definitely uncomfortable. The challenge is the disconnect or how informed the people at the grassroots are. Because sometimes when reform is in place, you know, one could think that it is more of an elitist thing. You know, numbers are being bandied around. How do macroeconomics translate to food on the table for the average Nigerian? So the Cityboy movement, while going about its mass mobilization, is taking time out to educate Nigerians on issues surrounding the reforms of the president, issues of fuel subsidy removal, where people will say, oh, we cannot buy fuel, the fuel prices have gone up. You know, Cityboy movement has a role to communicate to the last person at the ward level, at the grassroots, like that. As much as it seems, or, well, it appears that the cost of fuel has gone up, the fuel subsidy regime was a fiscally unsustainable system that benefited only a few people. Now, Mr. President has taken the fuel subsidy out. The thing is ensuring that the funds that are saved are channeled to social protection interventions, you know, things like transport support, food security, and infrastructure, which is what the president is working towards. So, of course, there's fuel subsidy removal. There's also stabilization of the forex regime. This is not just banding words about, it also has institutional validation, you know, from organizations like the World Bank, that Mr. President is doing a good job when it comes to reform, and eventually the average Nigerian will feel it.
I mean, you've spoken about the average Nigerian, but what about you and other members in the Cityboy movement? What's in it for you? Appointments?
Okay, so most people out there believe that the Cityboy movement is an elitist club or some kind of reward support group system. So you work for Mr. President so that eventually you can get some kind of reward. I'd like to tell you that any Nigerian who fits the cap and can get the job done deserves to get appointed into any position where they'd be able to serve and add value. However, for the Cityboy movement cuts across artisans, creatives, entrepreneurs, politicians like myself, and generally is open to every Nigerian. The thing is, it's not about, most of the people who are in the rank and file from the top to the bottom of the structure of the Cityboy movement are people who are well accomplished in their respective fields, successful businessmen, professionals who are reputable. So these are people who have first addresses, like myself. You know, I ran an election 2 years ago. I believe that I have an address, I have an occupation outside being a politician. So Cityboy movement is not about political jobbers seeking political appointments. If appointments come out of it eventually, the question you should be asking is, does the cap fit? Is it the right peg plugged in the right hole, or is it just a way of rewarding people for political participation? And I can assure you that's not what the Cityboy movement is all about.
All right, we just have about 30 seconds to go. The reason I asked the question I did ask, because there's a lot of psychological game and plays that will that will translate to maybe for or against all of this. That's why I talked about hatred and what I love, because if you're going to sell the agenda of the president and his plans and his reforms and structural resets, people need to believe first in the person that his intention is honorable for them in the long run. But I know you appreciate numbers and economics. So for what will it be in terms of alignment for people to begin to say, okay, maybe we're wrong about this particular move by the president? On one hand, is it prices moving to where it was, or wages increasing significantly to measure up with modern reality? Because I just asked the question that the average person is interested in.
Okay, so I'd like to say that, first of all, elections are not won by press conferences or on social media. Elections are won by performance weighed against results. The Cityboy movement exists to sell the agenda, the renewed hope of the agenda of Mr. President, and that is going to be through showing, telling the story that what you feel, is misalignment between government or a disconnect between government and the people is not as the story really is. The gap that exists, that is what the Cityboy movement is there to close. Bringing the citizens closer to government, giving a face to government, and showing the people at home that Mr. President is working. Mr. President is one person. He cannot do it all alone. It's building Nigeria is supposed to be partnership between the citizens and the president himself and his cabinet. So Cityboy movement is there to close the gap between the citizens and bring them closer to government, give government a face as well.
Thank you so much. More interesting days coming for us to have all of this engagement. These are just the very beginning. The hits will build to a crescendo when numbers will fly out and performances will be assessed and all of that. But it's good to see you. I see you as big sister now in politics. We'll be here to question all the actions as much as possible in the performance. Emmanuel Mawe is a journalist as well as a deputy governorship candidate in the last governorship election in Cross River State, as well as the national publicity secretary of the Cityboy movement. Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Cardi. Thank you, Jeffrey.
It's interesting, by the way. It just...
Oh, yes, it is.
You know what was pressing my mind? I remember I sat down with her reading news track many years ago, and now we have to banter politics.
Who knows, Jeffrey? You might now be the publicity secretary of...
Why does everybody think I will be a politician?
I don't know what it will be called for the candidate.
I really do not want to get into politics.
Girl movement.
I really do not want to get interested in anything political.
Well, let's show you some of the talking points on social media. Someone put up this very interesting picture, Jeffrey, of the EFCC headquarters, right, on X. And the caption on the picture was, "Hotel available. Location, Abuja. Price, 800 million naira. Agent fee, 120 million naira. Only serious buyers should DM." I should say again that is a picture of the EFCC HQ. So what did the Eagle say? That's the EFCC handle online. It says, you get mine, though. And that got a lot of people talking.
I like the humor. I miss the gentleman that used to be, I've forgotten his name. He brought a lot of humor. I think they are trying to reinvent it. Institution of government, they are not supposed to be devils. Once in a while, just throw these jabs and let's laugh over these things. But I think the person perhaps deliberately knew what he was doing, and if he needed the attention of the EFCC, it's definitely got into them. I don't think this will go beyond what it is as it is. But it's interesting that you pick up maybe someone who will offer Sorok for sale someday.
I bet you someone may have tried that.
It's just for the laughs.
There are comments online.
Laughs,
Celestial is actually not taking it as a joke. Says it's not a cruise, it's an extreme, a jailable offense that could lead to conviction under the law. How do you advertise government property as a hotel and put it up for sale online? He's already on Interpol's watch list, and everything about him is now known. I hope this is sarcasm. Sounds like sarcasm, I should say.
Come on. He's not that serious. Even EFCC has a lot to deal with. Than at least when you want to offer, you go and inspect the property, right? If I want to buy that picture, so for instance, if I didn't know this was EFCC facility, I say, oh, I have that money.
Can I check it?
If I'm blessed with that kind of money, I say, oh, I like this property. I go there.
Exactly.
Let's go to the site. And then
we should do the best.
I go and say, oh, look where they're driving at. I say, yes, sir, what are you doing? So, But it's not that serious, man.
Absolutely.
It's not that serious.
And there's this video also making the rounds about lawyer and activist Deji Adeyonju turning down a Bola Tinubu branded face cap offered by Sheivodi at an event. So clearly the Cityboy movement is going around. But
they are really working hard.
He said, nope, I'm dodging this, and this is a moment where it happened.
No, did you rather faint than take that cap? You know.
By the way, it's a cap, not a face cap.
Yeah. So you know, this cap matter, you know, and all of this. This is why sometimes I empathize with those who are politicians, because sometimes I feel like at some point when you're in politics and you're loyal to the party, you lose your mind, the mind of your own, at least in public. So even if you're not comfortable with wearing the cap because you want to show allegiance to the president, you wear the cap, you know. Sometimes the president messes up by your own assessment and you're very uncomfortable with that, you can't talk. You can't call the person to order. And and here the culture of resigning is not really that much of a big deal or of a thing to talk about. So anyway, Deji has said, keep your cap. I literally rejected it. And I know that Sheivodi was actually... So for those of you who don't know Sheivodi is a celebrity fashion designer. He owns one of the biggest fashion facility. He sells for the biggest of the biggest politicians, presidents, and all of that. So in case you don't know him, that's him trying to give the cap to
who the cap fits. That's a filler, by the way. And I should say he's also a connectologist, if there's a term like that. He's able to connect people. And they're friends, by the way, so just know that in spite of their political difference...
Okay, they are friends.
They're friends. In spite of their political differences, they still maintain their friendship.
It's not about enmity. Okay, so that's what people have been tracking for us. But most thank you so much, and thank you for your company. Big support for anyone. If you're a young person out there, don't just be on the keyboard on the social media. Get involved somewhere. Civil society, political parties, join. We are here as young people as well. Now, I'm not a youth anymore, but I'm not old, to do our bit. So hold government
Where are you rushing to, Jeffrey? Are you a septuagenarian or not?
I'm not a youth.
Where are you rushing?
I'm past the youth ages. I'm just saying we're doing our part as young persons in the media to hold the government and the powerful to account. So do your part as well. Thank you for your time and company. Sunrise Daily is up at the top of the hour. Bye-bye.
Well, I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Stay with Channels Television. Goodbye.